Welcome to Book Nibbles. Big ideas, small bites. David Grann's Killers of the Flower Moon is a chilling and meticulously detailed account of a dark chapter in American history, a story that merges greed, racism, and corruption with the early struggles of the FBI. The narrative unfolds in the 1920s in Osage County, Oklahoma, a land inhabited by the Osage Nation, whose members had become extraordinarily wealthy after oil was discovered beneath their lands. The Osage had suffered centuries of oppression, displacement, and marginalization, yet the oil boom granted them a rare period of economic prosperity and autonomy. By the 1920s, members of the Osage Nation were living lives of opulence unimaginable for Native Americans elsewhere. They owned cars, homes, jewelry, and often had access to the latest technology. They sent their children to private schools, dressed in fine clothing, and traveled widely. This wealth, however, would prove to be both a blessing and a curse, as it attracted predators motivated by greed and prejudice. The book opens with a sense of foreboding, recounting the seemingly inexplicable deaths of several Osage individuals. The narrative quickly establishes that these were not isolated incidents but part of a systematic and sinister plot. Members of the Osage Nation were being murdered at an alarming rate, and the deaths often appeared to be accidents, overdoses, or cases of natural causes. Yet the pattern was undeniable. Those who had wealth or inheritance rights, known as head rights, were dying under suspicious circumstances. The system of head rights, inherited from allotments given to individual Osage members, meant that wealth passed from one family member to another, usually to other Osage, upon death. This system made the Osage rich but also made them targets. Many white individuals, including guardians and businessmen appointed by local courts, saw an opportunity to seize this wealth. The story quickly paints a picture of a society where racial prejudice, legal manipulation, and unbridled greed intersected to create a culture of murder. Grann introduces the figure of William Hale, a prominent white rancher who would emerge as the mastermind behind much of the killing. Hale was outwardly respected, a community leader who cultivated an image of benevolence and civility. Yet behind closed doors, he orchestrated a campaign of manipulation, coercion, and murder, designed to transfer the wealth of Osage heirs into his own hands and those of his associates. Grann carefully reconstructs Hale's methods, showing how he exploited relationships, leveraged legal guardianships, and meticulously planned the deaths to appear accidental or natural. The book reveals that Hale was not alone in his schemes. He relied on accomplices, including corrupt lawyers, lawmen, and other community members, who were complicit in the exploitation and murder of Osage people. The narrative underscores the chilling reality that these crimes were not impulsive but systematic, calculated, and driven by the simple yet devastating force of greed. Grann also illuminates the role of the legal and governmental system in perpetuating these injustices. Many Osage victims had white guardians, appointed ostensibly to manage their finances due to prejudiced assumptions about Native intelligence or capacity. These guardians, far from protecting their wards, often engaged in theft, coercion, and murder to gain control of oil royalties. The book recounts examples of guardians forcing young Osage women into marriages with men who would then inherit their wealth, or arranging suspicious deaths to acquire head rights. Courts often turned a blind eye, reflecting the deeply entrenched racial biases of the era. This systemic exploitation demonstrates that the murders were not merely criminal acts but also facilitated by a broader structure of institutionalized racism and corruption. As the death toll rose and the pattern became undeniable, the federal government became involved. The newly formed Federal Bureau of Investigation, under J. Edgar Hoover, saw the Osage murders as an opportunity to assert federal authority over local corruption and lawlessness. The book chronicles the FBI's investigation, led by Tom White, a former Texas Ranger with a reputation for methodical and determined detective work. White's approach contrasted sharply with the local law enforcement, which had often been complicit or ineffective. He recognized that solving these murders required careful intelligence, undercover operations, and a deep understanding of both the criminal network and the community's social dynamics. Grann meticulously reconstructs White's methods, illustrating the painstaking process of interviews, surveillance, and evidence gathering that eventually exposed the extent of the conspiracy. One of the most striking aspects of Killers of the Flower Moon is Grann's ability to humanize the Osage victims. The book does not reduce them to statistics or plot points. It provides intimate portraits of individuals, their families, and their communities. Figures such as Molly Burkhart and her family emerge vividly. Molly endured the death of multiple family members, witnessing one tragedy after another, and yet she displayed remarkable resilience and courage. Grann explores the psychological toll of the murders, the fear, grief, and mistrust that pervaded the Osage Nation. The book captures the tension between the community's desire to live freely and the constant threat posed by those seeking to exploit them. These personal narratives create a haunting effect, making it clear that the Osage murders were not abstract crimes but deeply human tragedies with lasting repercussions. Grann also delves into the broader cultural and historical context that made these crimes possible. He examines the long history of exploitation, displacement, and marginalization of Native Americans in the United States, showing how the legacy of conquest, broken treaties, and systemic discrimination set the stage for the Osage murders. The oil wealth that made the Osage prosperous also made them targets in a society where racial prejudice normalized the dispossession of Native peoples. By situating the murders within this historical framework, Grann underscores that the events were part of a continuum of oppression, not isolated anomalies. The narrative further explores the role of money, power, and manipulation in perpetuating the murders. Grann details how inheritance laws, legal guardianships, and social expectations were weaponized against the Osage. For example, the book recounts cases in which white guardians would encourage Osage heirs to make financial decisions that benefited their guardians or coerce them into signing overhead rights. In some cases, outright murder was employed to expedite the transfer of wealth. The meticulous planning of these crimes, coupled with the complicity of local authorities, demonstrates a chilling intersection of legal frameworks, social engineering, and human avarice. As the FBI investigation gained traction, White and his agents faced numerous challenges. Local witnesses were intimidated, records were falsified, and the conspiracy extended into unexpected quarters of the community. Grann describes the tense dynamics of the investigation, including the use of undercover agents, coded communication, and careful observation to catch perpetrators off guard. The narrative highlights the ingenuity and courage required to navigate a society in which nearly everyone had a vested interest in silencing the truth. White's determination and strategic thinking ultimately allowed the FBI to piece together evidence linking Hale and his accomplices to multiple murders. The book does not shy away from the complexity of proving these crimes in court. Even with compelling evidence, the legal system posed obstacles. Juries were often biased, witnesses were fearful, and the defendants employed sophisticated legal maneuvers to evade accountability. Grann recounts the trial of William Hale and his associates, illustrating the intricate web of testimonies, cross-examinations, and legal strategy required to secure convictions. The narrative conveys the dramatic tension of these proceedings, capturing both the triumph of justice and the lingering sense that many culpable parties escaped full accountability. Grann's work also explores the social implications of the Osage murders. He examines how the killings eroded trust within the community, instilling fear and suspicion even among family and friends. The book discusses the psychological trauma experienced by survivors and the long-term effects on the Osage Nation, including economic and social dislocation. The narrative emphasizes that the consequences of these murders were not limited to immediate loss of life or wealth. They reverberated across generations, shaping social relations, cultural memory, and the community's sense of security. Throughout the book, Grann juxtaposes the personal and the institutional, showing how individual greed intersected with systemic failures. The story of the Osage murders is not merely about a few malevolent actors. It is about a society in which laws, courts, and social norms allowed exploitation to flourish. Grann carefully examines the role of race, wealth, and power in facilitating these crimes, highlighting the broader lessons for understanding systemic injustice. By weaving together personal narratives, historical context, and investigative detail, the book creates a layered and nuanced portrait of both the crimes and the society in which they occurred. The narrative also explores the evolution of the FBI as an institution. The Osage murders provided an early test of federal investigative power, and the successful resolution of these cases helped establish the Bureau's credibility. Grann emphasizes the contrast between the local corruption that had allowed the murders to continue and the professionalism, strategy, and persistence of federal agents. The book suggests that the Osage murders were formative in shaping modern investigative practices, including the use of undercover operations, forensic evidence, and interjurisdictional coordination. This historical perspective enriches the story, showing how a single series of crimes can have far-reaching institutional implications. In addition to detailing the investigation and trial, Grann delves into the lives and motivations of the perpetrators. William Hale, the central figure, is portrayed with nuance. He is at once cunning, manipulative, and charismatic, yet utterly ruthless. The book examines how he justified his actions, cultivated loyalty among accomplices, and manipulated both social and legal structures to achieve his ends. Grann also examines the roles of other conspirators, including Molly Burkhart's relatives who were coerced into complicity, highlighting the moral ambiguity and human frailty that contributed to the crimes. These portraits reveal the complex interplay of ambition, fear, and greed that drives human behavior. The book's storytelling style, rich with detail and historical research, allows readers to experience the events almost as they unfold. Grann provides vivid descriptions of Osage County, the homes and ranches, the landscapes of wealth and isolation, and the communities shaped by both prosperity and fear. He reconstructs conversations, meetings, and moments of tension with dramatic immediacy, making the narrative both compelling and immersive. The careful balance between narrative storytelling and factual reporting ensures that the reader gains both an emotional and intellectual understanding of the events. Grann also emphasizes the resilience of the Osage people. Despite facing systemic exploitation, murder, and intimidation, they sought justice, cooperated with investigators, and maintained cultural cohesion. The narrative highlights the courage of individuals who testified, resisted manipulation, and preserved the memory of the victims. Grann portrays the Osage as active agents in their own story, not merely passive victims, emphasizing the strength, resourcefulness, and determination that enabled them to survive and seek justice in a hostile environment. The book concludes by reflecting on the broader implications of the Osage murders. Grann situates these events within the larger context of American history, highlighting themes of systemic racism, greed, and the vulnerability of marginalized communities. He underscores the enduring relevance of these lessons, noting that exploitation and injustice are not confined to the past. By examining the intersections of law, power, and morality, the narrative challenges readers to consider how societies can prevent similar abuses in the future. The Osage murders serve as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked greed and prejudice, and of the importance of vigilance, justice, and ethical responsibility. Killers of the Flower Moon is ultimately a story of human complexity. It juxtaposes wealth and poverty, power and vulnerability, cunning and morality. Grann's meticulous research, combined with his narrative skill, allows readers to understand not only what happened but why it happened and how it was possible. He illuminates the social, legal, and psychological factors that converge to create a climate in which murder could be systematically employed for profit. By focusing on individual stories, institutional dynamics, and historical context, Grann provides a comprehensive and haunting portrait of one of the darkest chapters in American history. The book leaves a lasting impression, revealing the fragility of justice in the face of prejudice and the persistence of human resilience in the face of systemic oppression. Through vivid storytelling, Grann emphasizes that history is shaped by both individual actions and broader social forces. The narrative is compelling not only as a historical account but as a meditation on morality, power, and the human capacity for both cruelty and courage. Killers of the Flower Moon is a testament to the enduring importance of documenting and understanding history, ensuring that the lessons of the past remain relevant for the future. And that's it. David Grann's Killers of the Flower Moon. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.